Hello, this is London calling. Hello, hello, this is London calling. Today I had the pleasure of chatting with Mr. Rahul Pantin, a former columnist with the Trinidad Express. He recently visited the UK. Today, we chatted at Russell Square. This is some of the things he had to say.
Any journalist can. I've worked on a lot of stories. I've been a business reporter, a political reporter, a crime reporter at one point for the Trinidad Daily Mirror. I didn't last very long in that. And a bit of a writer, because I was working at the Trinidad Guardian during the 1970 Black Power upheaval, and I covered it in great detail. And subsequently did a book on it titled Black Power Day, which is unfortunately now out of print. But I have worked very hard as a journalist all my life. I arrived at the pinnacle of my career when I was appointed editor of the Trinidad Express. I eventually retired from the Express in 2007, but continued to work as a freelance journalist. I work for newspapers, I work for television, and generally anybody who would have me, actually.
Could you elaborate a little bit on what the book is about?
Okay, it's entitled Days of Wrath, and it covers the 6-day period in 1990 during the attempted coup by the Jamaat al-Muslimin, when, along with about 25 other TTT staff members, including Jones Madeira, who was the news director, we were held hostage under the gun for 6 days. As I often say, it's an experience that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It was quite a horrifying experience. Twice while we were inside there, the army attacked the Muslimin. So we were literally lying spread flat out on the ground with machine gun bullets whizzing over our head. Quite horrifying. And we weren't sure if we would come out alive. As a matter of fact, I remember once getting Colonel Joseph Theodore on the telephone, and I was saying to him, among other things, well, you know, Colonel Theodore, this was, I think, Sunday or Monday. We had been held up since Friday, and I said, we've had nothing to eat since Friday. What can you do? He said, well, the army has its hands full at the moment, but, you know, I'll see what arrangements I can make and so on. And being a Trinidadian, I made a joke of it. I said, well, Colonel Theodore, I hope you don't die for starvation. And I'll never forget, there was a distinct pause on the phone, and he said starvation might be a better option. At which point in time I realized, my God, the army is probably thinking of storming this place. And if they did that, I think most of us would have been killed. Now, Abu Bakr and they said that they had wired the television station with explosives. In fact, on the second day, the Saturday, we were all placed in a room which was supposed to be wired to a bomb. And they said if the army attacked, we would be blown up. One of the members of the Muslimin came to us afterwards and said, well, we don't really mean that, you know, it's just a ploy that we're trying and so on. But I mean, we didn't know. There was a cardboard box you could see. In the room we were in, there was a grill gate with a smaller room, and you could see this cardboard box with wires attached leading to it. So I continue to have nightmares about that experience 21 years later. So I did the book. It took me quite a while to write the book. I think it wasn't published until about 2008. But then I had to go through a bit of psychiatric treatment because I was diagnosed as suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And let me make the point that I had to pay for this myself. None of the hostages, including Jones Madeira, were offered any kind of assistance by the government after the coup, which I think is rather reprehensible. There is now a commission of inquiry into the coup taking place in Trinidad. I have been asked to appear, but I haven't been given a date as yet. And if I go, I will simply relate my experiences at the time. Now, let me just say this. Yesterday at the conference, it concluded with a panel discussion on the political situation in Trinidad and what the future is likely to hold. And I asked the question, is the 1990 coup simply a one-off aberration, or should we be on the lookout for more of the same? And all three members of the panel said the conditions that produced the 1990 coup are still prevalent in Trinidad. So you have to be careful. It could happen again. I hope to God not. I couldn't say what the government's political intentions are, but I welcome the inquiry. I think, although it comes 21 years later, I think Trinidad needs to clear the air on what went on there. Now, witnesses from the Jamaat al-Muslimin have appeared. So have most of the hostages. Mr. Robinson, the Prime Minister at the time, has appeared. The former Attorney General, and so on. Jennifer Johnson, who was also one of the hostages in the Red House. And I don't know that the Commission of Inquiry is going to result in any kind of judicial action. Now, it should be made clear that the amnesty which the Muslimin wrested from the government under the gun was declared valid by the lower courts in Trinidad. The government appealed to the High Court. The High Court also said it was valid. But then there was a further appeal to the Privy Council. And the Privy Council, interestingly enough, ruled the amnesty was not valid. They said it was not valid because the insurgents continued to make demands even after they'd agreed to an amnesty. But the Privy Council ruled, this was in 1994, that since 4 years had passed, it would not be in keeping with due process to have the 114 insurgents rearrested and charged and so on. So I don't know that the Commission of Inquiry is going to result in charges against anybody, but I do believe that it is a very necessary thing because that event absolutely terrified Trinidad.
I hold that thought, Mr. Pandey. Let me ask you this question.
As I say, there's a lot of confusion about the coup. There are a lot of questions, unanswered questions about the coup. For example, why wasn't Mr. Pandey and Mr. Manning in the House on that particular Friday? Mr. Pandey's initially frivolous remark when he was called about it was, "Wake me up when it's over." Mr. Manning, when he was asked about it, said, "That is a row between the Jamaat al-Muslimin and the NAR." He subsequently issued a statement condemning the coup. So there are all kinds of unanswered questions. I don't know if these gentlemen are going to appear before the Commission of Inquiry. And I am not sure that the trauma that Trinidad went through at that time has been completely resolved. I am hoping that this Commission of Inquiry would help to clear the air, to give people a better idea of what went on, and hopefully contain some recommendations that might stave off any such repeat in the future. Well, naturally, Trinidad being part of the international economy, if there is a worldwide recession, we'll be affected by it. Trinidad is very fortunate of all the Caribbean islands because we have oil and gas. Whether those oil and gas prices will remain in the buoyant stage, one doesn't know. I see that Libya is off the oil market at the moment. Syria is also seems to be, the Western world has stopped buying from Syria. So this might have an immediate effect on oil prices. But Mr. Winston Duke-Oran, the finance minister, is about to present his budget for the new year. We'll have to wait and see what details come out of it. But Trinidad has to be very careful. The government has to be extremely careful in the expenditure. We cannot be in the kind of wild profligate spending that has been our habit in the past. Also, unemployment in Trinidad is not in a healthy state. And there's a lot of joblessness. And the government has to take steps to try and improve on that. Now, one of the interesting things that has happened in Trinidad at the moment, there's a state of emergency on. It's been extended for 3 months, which means it will probably go until the end of September, October, or probably October, November, I'm not sure which. This state of emergency was aimed at cracking down on crime because the extent of criminality in Trinidad was really getting out of hand. I mean, they murdered about 11 people in one weekend. People were being shot down right, left, and center. A lot of the opposition, of course, took an objection to the state of emergency, but the government introduced it. And one of the side products of that state of emergency is the government has hired Dr. Sabin Ryan to do a study on why are so many young black males in Trinidad and Tobago involved in crime. And I think that's a very important study. A lot of issues should come out in the open on that. And based on Dr. Ryan's report, I'm hoping the government will take the action to deal with it.
All right. Finally, now, in the sense of the future for Trinidad and Tobago, remember that when the last government was in power, the PLM government was in power, there was a Vision 20 proposed. What are you seeing that same target, 2020 vision, for this present government?
I haven't seen any such plan developed by the present government. The present government, as a matter of fact, is making a lot of what I would call amateur errors at the moment. I don't know if they're developing such a long-term plan. They should. Every country should have a long-term plan. But the government at the moment, I think, is still trying to find its feet. It's making some very egregious errors, unnecessary errors, which I think is a result of inexperience. The country on a whole, there's a bit of disgruntlement settling in already because, you know, the government promised change and people aren't seeing the kind of change that they wanted. So we remain in a sort of political in-betweenity at the moment. The people of the country are still looking for change, and what they're getting at the moment is exchange.
All right, let's close it off with this. I want to ask you, A question here, I don't want to laugh. Mr. Panting, are you a Trinidadian?
Of course.
Birth, born, bred?
Birth, born, bred. My mother is Venezuelan, but my father is Trinidadian. My mother, by the way, will be 102 years old come January next year.
Okay.
Although my youngest brother, the youngest member of our family, Dennis, the economist, he died
Yes, Dennis.
last year.
All right.
I'm a born and bred Trinidadian, and I love Trinidad. People are several just say, you're a bright guy. Why don't you migrate? You'll do very well. I love Trinidad.
So you have no regrets being a Trinidadian?
None whatsoever.
Would you change? Would you give up your birthright to live in a country like the US or the UK?
No. I've been asked that question several times. No. In spite of the negative experiences that I have had in Trinidad, I've done 1970, I've done 1990. I keep saying I'm not doing the third one, whenever it comes around. As a matter of fact, when I saw the riots in London on TV, I said, wait a minute, no, I coming up there or what? No, I am a born and bred and loyal and faithful Trinidadian. I love my country, I love my people. In spite of their quirks and foibles, every country has it. But no, I am Trinidadian to the bone.